Have you ever noticed how the older you get, the louder the world seems? Even when you want more quiet, have you ever asked yourself why time feels shorter, yet your mind feels busier? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are stepping into a softer, deeper conversation about old age, not as a problem to solve, but as a path you can walk with dignity. Many people think the hardest part of aging is the body, but often the hardest part is the mind. The mind that keeps replaying what should have happened. The mind that keeps scanning what other people have. The mind that keeps worrying about what might go wrong. So in this video, we are going to explore 8 Buddhist lessons that help you focus your life in old age, in a gentle way that turns years into wisdom, fear into clarity, and loneliness into compassion. I want to begin with a scene that might feel familiar. An older person's, it's at a kitchen table early in the morning. The house is quiet, the cup is warm, the light is soft, yet inside the mind, it is not quiet at all. Thoughts rise like birds startled from a tree. What if my health gets worse? What if I become a burden? What if my children drift away? What if I run out of money? What if my life did not mean what I hoped it meant? Then the person looks out the window and sees someone younger walking quickly, wearing headphones, moving like time is unlimited, and suddenly a strange ache appears. Not exactly envy, not exactly sadness, but a sharp sense of distance. As if life is a hallway and you are standing at the far end. Buddhism does not deny this ache. It does not shame it. It simply asks you to look closer. Because when you look closer, you realize the ache is not really about age. It is about attention. Where your attention goes, your life goes. If attention is trapped in the past, you live in the past. If attention is trapped in the future, you live in fear. If attention is trapped in comparison, you live in hunger. But if attention returns to the present, something changes. Even if the body is tired, the heart can be free. So let us walk through 8 lessons, not like rules, not like a lecture, but like a journey. Imagine you and I are walking along a quiet path beside a river. The river is time. It keeps moving. We cannot stop it, but we can learn to walk with it. And the first lesson begins exactly there. The first lesson is to befriend impermanence, not as a cold idea, but as a living teacher. Everything changes. You already know this. But knowing and accepting are different. Knowing is mental. Accepting is spiritual. Accepting means you stopped reading change like an insult. You stop asking why is this happening to me, as if you were singled out. You start seeing change as the law of life. The way seasons turn, the way leaves fall, the way the sky shifts. When you befriend impermanence, you stop wasting energy trying to freeze time. You start using energy to meet each moment with awareness. There is an old man I once heard about who visited the same park bench every afternoon. People assumed he was lonely, but he was not there to escape life. He was there to study it. He watched children run, couples argue, dogs chase, birds land, clouds move. One day, a young woman asked him why he came every day. He said, "Because everything here teaches me. The children teach me joy and change. The couples teach me desire and suffering. The birds teach me freedom. The clouds teach me letting go." Then he paused and smiled. "And my own body teaches me the most honest lesson of all. It changes, whether I approve or not. So I can fight and become bitter, or I can learn and become wise." This is what impermanence offers. It turns aging from a tragedy into a classroom, not a classroom where you are punished, but one where you are invited to awaken. When your hair changes, when your energy shifts, when your memory feels different, You are being offered a chance to practice non-clinging. Non-clinging does not mean you do not care. It means you do not grip. You do not demand life to match your preferences in order to feel peace. When you accept impermanence, you also realize something surprisingly comforting. Your fear is impermanent too. Your sadness is impermanent too. Your loneliness is impermanent too. They rise, they fall, they change shape. They are visitors, not your identity. The mind says this feeling will last forever. Impermanence says no feeling is forever, so you can breathe, and you can wait, and you can stay gentle with yourself. The second lesson is to see suffering clearly, so you stop adding the second wound. Buddhism teaches that pain is part of life, but much suffering is optional. The body may ache, but the mind turns that ache into a story. The story says, I am useless now. The story says, I am being punished. The story says, I will be abandoned. The story says, my best days are gone. The story becomes heavier than the ache itself. In Buddhist imagery, there is the idea of two arrows. The first arrow is unavoidable pain, aging, illness, loss. The second arrow is what the mind adds: resistance, blame, panic, shame. When you learn to see this, you begin to separate what is happening from what you are telling yourself about what is happening. This is a turning point, because you may not control the first arrow, but you can train yourself not to shoot the second. An older woman once described it in a simple way. She said, "My knees hurt. That is the truth. But when I say my knees hurt, therefore my life is over, I have turned truth into tragedy." She laughed softly, undated. My knees hurt, therefore I need to walk slower and notice more. That is wisdom. Old age often invites you to slow down. The world calls that decline. Buddhism can call it refinement. When you slow down, you can see the mind more clearly. You can notice how quickly it runs to worst-case scenarios. You can notice how it grabs a single symptom and turns it into a future funeral. You can notice how it interprets quiet as abandonment. You can notice how it interprets resting as failure. Seeing clearly is not pessimism, it is liberation. Because what you see, you can soften. The third lesson is to stop worshiping the clock and start honoring the moment. Many people feel anxious in old age because time feels scarce. The mind starts counting. How many years left? How many winters? How many chances? Counting can be useful for planning, but it becomes poison when it becomes obsession. Buddhism offers a different relationship with time. It says the only life you can live is the one happening now. The past exists as memory. The future exists as imagination. The present is where karma is made. The present is where awakening happens. When people hear this, they sometimes think it means you should ignore responsibilities. It does not. It means you should stop abandoning your own life while you are living it. The mind can spend an entire day in the future and then at night say, "Where did my day go?" The day went where your attention went. One older gentleman described a shift he made after retirement. At first, he tried to fill every hour with activity because he feared emptiness. He watched shows, scrolled news, argued online, planned projects, joined groups, stayed busy, but he felt strangely hollow. Then he began a simple practice. Each morning, he chose one ordinary act to do with full presence: making tea, washing a bowl, folding a towel, watering a plant. He treated the act like meditation. He felt the warmth, noticed the smell, heard the sound, watched the mind wander and return. After a few weeks, he said, "I feel like I have more time now. even though I do less, because I am actually here. Honoring the moment is not about making everything spiritual. It is about making yourself present enough to meet your own life. Old age can be a doorway into this because distractions lose their shine. You start craving what is real. The fourth lesson is to loosen the identity that makes you suffer. Aging often hurts because it threatens identity. I am the strong one. I am the helper. I am the provider. I am the attractive one. I am the busy one. I am the one who never needs anyone. When the body changes or roles shift, the mind panics, not only because of physical change, but because the self-image starts cracking. Buddhism teaches not self, meaning the self you cling to is not fixed. It is a collection of changing conditions. This is not depressing. It is freeing, because if the self is not fixed, you are not trapped inside an old role. There is a story of someone who spent decades being the family problem solver. Everyone called, everyone depended. Then one year she became ill and needed help herself. At first she felt shame. She felt like she was failing. Then she noticed something. The shame was not coming from her body. It was coming from her identity. The identity said, "My worth is in being useful." When she questioned that identity, she found a deeper truth. Her worth was in her being, not her output. She began to accept help without apology, and something beautiful happened. Relationships became more honest. People around her grew kinder. She allowed others to practice compassion. By letting go of the identity of the invincible helper, she stepped into the identity of a human being, equal and connected. Not self does not erase your personality. It removes the tightness. It allows you to be flexible. In old age, flexibility of mind matters more than flexibility of body, because the world will change around you. Technology will change. Culture will change. People will come and go. If your mind is rigid, you suffer. If your mind is flexible, you adapt. This is spiritual fitness. The fifth lesson is to treat karma as empowerment, not punishment. Karma is often misunderstood as fate. In Buddhism, karma is cause and effect shaped by intention. It means what you repeatedly think, say, and do becomes the direction of your life. Old age can feel like a time when karma is finished, like the results are set. But Buddhism says as long as you are alive, new causes can be planted. Even if you cannot change the past, you can change the next moment. That means old age is not the end of growth. It can be the most mature season of growth. Think of a garden. Some seeds you planted long ago are sprouting now. Perhaps you see relationships that reflect decades of kindness. Or perhaps you see distance that reflects decades of neglect. It can hurt to see results. But karma also says you can start planting new seeds today. You can speak honestly. You can apologize. You can forgive. You can stop harmful habits. You can begin nourishing habits. You can create causes for peace. An older man once said, "I cannot go back and be a better father when my children were small, but I can be a better father now by listening without defensiveness." That is karma. A woman said, "I cannot go back and take care of my body when I was young, but I can take care of it now with respect." That is karma. Someone else said, "I cannot go back and choose a different career, but I can choose to mentor someone now and turn my experience into compassion." That is karma. This lesson is powerful because it shifts the feeling of being trapped. Old age can trigger helplessness. Karma says you still have agency. Not the agency to control everything, but the agency to choose your response. and your response shapes your mind. The sixth lesson is to practice loving kindness until it becomes your inner home. Many people carry a harsh inner voice into old age, the voice that judges, compares, complains, and shames. It might sound like motivation, but it is often cruelty. In Buddhism, loving kindness practice is a way to retrain that voice. It is a way to soften the heart and build inner safety. Loving kindness begins with yourself, not because you are selfish, but because without inner kindness, the mind becomes a battlefield. When the body becomes more vulnerable, you need inner gentleness even more. Otherwise, every ache becomes an argument. There was a person who lost a spouse after many years together. The grief was heavy. Friends tried to comfort, but nights were long. The mind would replay memories, then jump into fear. Who will care for me now? What is the point now? One day, in a quiet moment, the person began to speak softly to themselves, like speaking to a grieving friend. May I be safe. May I be held by kindness. May I find peace. It did not remove grief, but it changed the atmosphere of grief. It turned grief from a prison into a sacred space. Loving kindness is also how you transform loneliness. Loneliness is not only the absence of people, it is the absence of connection. You can be surrounded and still feel alone if your heart is closed. Loving kindness opens the heart. It helps you feel connected to life itself. The trees outside, the animals, the strangers, the people also aging, also afraid, also hoping. When you feel that shared humanity, the sharp edge of loneliness softens. Compassion is not weakness. It is courage. It is the courage to feel without turning bitter. It is the courage to forgive yourself and others. In old age, forgiveness becomes a form of liberation. It releases emotional weight that the body can no longer comfortably carry. The seventh lesson is to simplify, so the mind can become clear. As people age, the mind can feel crowded. Too many possessions, too many obligations, too many unresolved emotions, too many half-finished stories. Buddhism often points toward simplicity, not as deprivation, but as clarity. When you simplify, you create space. Space for breath, space for reflection, space for what matters. Simplification can be physical, letting go of things you no longer use, creating a living space that supports calm. But it is even more important emotionally, letting go of grudges, letting go of old competitions, letting go of the need to prove, letting go of the story that you must always be right, letting go of the story that you must be admired. There is a quiet joy that appears when you stop carrying unnecessary weight. Many older people discover that happiness does not require a complicated life. It requires a sincere one. When you simplify, you can focus on the essential: relationships, health, presence, kindness, spiritual practice, creative expression, service. In Buddhist terms, this is renunciation, not in the dramatic sense of leaving society, but in the everyday sense of releasing what feeds suffering. You renounce the habits that steal your peace. You renounce the addictions that numb you. You renounce the resentment that keeps you chained to the past. You renounce the endless craving for more, more, more. Simplification is also deeply connected to wisdom because it reveals what is already enough. The mind that is always chasing cannot see the beauty of what is here. The simplified mind can. The eighth lesson is to make peace with aging by turning it into practice, not a verdict. This is where everything comes together. Impermanence, suffering, present moment, not self, karma, loving kindness, simplicity. The final lesson is to live these, not just understand them, Because the mind does not change through ideas alone. It changes through repetition, through training, through practice in ordinary moments. Old age is not only a time when the body changes, it is a time when the spiritual path becomes more obvious. The question becomes less about ambition and more about liberation, less about building an image and more about building a mind that can face death without panic. Buddhism speaks openly about death, not to scare you, but to wake you up. Awareness of death makes life precious. It helps you stop wasting attention. It helps you say what matters. It helps you love now. One of the most gentle truths is that you do not need to become perfect to become peaceful. You only need to become more aware and more kind. Practice can be simple. A few minutes of breathing, a mindful walk, a habit of gratitude, a pause before reacting, a decision to speak truthfully, a choice to forgive, a moment of generosity, a short reflection at night on what you planted today in speech and thought. Let me tell you a longer story that holds all 8 lessons. Because sometimes a single human life can show what teachings mean more than any explanation. Imagine someone named Helen. She is in her late 60s, not rich, not famous, not especially dramatic, just a person carrying a normal life. She worked for many years in a job that was not her dream but paid bills. She raised children with love and mistakes. Like everyone, she lost her mother. She watched her father fade. She went through a divorce that left her feeling like a failure. Then retirement arrived, and she felt a strange emptiness. Without the job, she did not know where to place her energy. Without the daily rush, she could hear her own mind more clearly, and what she heard was not pleasant. Old regrets, old arguments, old fears, all returning like birds to a quiet field. At first, Helen did what many people do. She tried to drown it out. She kept the television on. She stayed busy. She filled her schedule with errands. She scrolled online. She compared herself to people who looked happier. The comparison sharpened her pain. She thought, I am old and alone and behind. Then one afternoon, she visited a small community center because a neighbor invited her to a talk. The speaker was a monk, but not the dramatic kind. He spoke plainly. He said, old age is not a punishment. It is a reveal. It reveals what the mind has been clinging to. It reveals where the heart is tight. And it reveals what is still possible. That phrase stayed with her. Old age is a reveal. She went home and sat quietly. For the first time in months, she allowed silence. The mind immediately protested. Silence felt dangerous because it allowed emotions to surface. But she remembered the monk saying, what you resist persists. So she breathed. She felt the discomfort. She noticed thoughts rising. I wasted my life. I am too late. Nobody needs me. She saw how these thoughts were not facts, but habits. She saw how each thought tightened her chest. And in that seeing, a small gap appeared. That night, she slept slightly better. Not because her problems vanished, but because she stopped fighting reality for a few minutes. The next day, she searched for a simple meditation instruction and began sitting each morning for 10 minutes. She did not become calm right away. In fact, the first week felt worse because she was finally seeing the mind. But she kept going. Over time, she noticed impermanence directly. A wave of sadness would come, then fade. A wave of anger would come, then soften. A wave of loneliness would come, then change shape. She realized emotions were like weather. She also realized she had been treating weather as identity. That was lesson 1 in her bones, not as an idea. Impermanence, Then, she started noticing how much suffering she created by adding stories. When her knee hurt, she would think, "This is the beginning of the end." She would panic. Then, she would tense, and the pain would feel worse. One day, she tried something different. She said, "Sensation is here, fear is here, but I do not have to fuse them." She rested her hand on her knee gently and breathed. The pain did not disappear, but her mind stopped screaming. She realized she had been shooting herself with the second arrow for years. That was lesson 2, seeing suffering clearly. As weeks passed, she began to practice being present in ordinary acts. She washed dishes slowly. She felt the water. She listened to the sound. She watched thoughts arise and return. She noticed that when she was fully present, she was not old or young. She was simply alive. The mind stopped measuring time when it was absorbed in reality. That was lesson 3, honoring the moment. Then, a deeper shift came. She realized she had been holding an identity of being the abandoned one, the divorced one, the one who failed, the one who did not get chosen. That identity had shaped her posture, her voice, her expectations. She started questioning it. Is this who I am? Or is this a story I keep repeating? She realized the self is not one thing. It is a process. She could be a learner now. She could be a friend now. She could be a mentor now. She could be an artist now. She could be a person who begins again. That was lesson 4, loosening identity. Then she looked at her relationships through karma, not as blame, but as cause and effect. She saw how years of avoiding conflict lead to distance. She saw how years of overgiving led to resentment. She saw how years of silence led to misunderstanding. This hurt, but it also empowered her. She began to plant new causes. She called her children and listened without trying to control. She apologized for specific moments without defending herself. She visited an old friend and admitted she had been withdrawn. She began offering small kindness to neighbors. The results were not immediate, but the atmosphere of her life began to change. People responded differently when she showed up with sincerity. That was lesson 5, karma as empowerment. As she practiced, she also began loving kindness meditation. At first it felt awkward. She did not believe the phrases, "May I be peaceful," "May I be safe," "May I be free from suffering." But she kept repeating them, not as a lie, but as an intention. Slowly her inner voice softened. When she made mistakes, she did not attack herself. When she felt lonely, she did not shame herself. She treated her own heart like something worthy of care. The strangest thing happened. The more she offered kindness to herself, the more kindness naturally flowed outward. She became more patient with strangers, less judgmental, more willing to help without bitterness. Her face softened. People began to tell her she looked lighter. That was lesson 6, loving kindness as home. Then she simplified. She cleared clutter. She donated old clothes. She stopped buying things she did not need. She turned off the constant news cycle that kept her nervous. She reduced the number of people she had to impress. She focused on a few sincere relationships. She made her home quieter, not because she wanted to hide from life, but because she wanted to hear it. In the space she created, clarity grew. She noticed she could feel content with very little when the mind was not craving. That was lesson 7, simplification. Finally, she began to treat aging itself as practice. Each ache became a bell reminding her to breathe. Each loss became a teacher of impermanence. Each fear became a chance to choose compassion. Each interaction became a chance to plant karma. She began contemplating death, not with horror, but with respect. She realized death is not the opposite of life. It is part of life. She decided she wanted to meet it with a mind that had practiced peace. That was lesson 8, turning old age into practice. Now here is the part people do not expect. Helen did not become a saint. She still had difficult days. She still felt grief. She still had moments of anxiety. But the center of her life changed. She no longer felt like she was falling behind. She felt like she was coming home. That is what these 8 lessons can do. Not by making you younger, but by making you freer. Let us talk about something else that often shows up in old age: overthinking. Overthinking is the mind trying to control what it cannot control. It is also the mind trying to protect you from pain by rehearsing pain. Buddhism approaches overthinking with mindfulness and wisdom. You do not fight thoughts. You observe them. You let them pass. You return to breath. You return to the body. You return to what is true right now. When the mind says, "I will end up alone," you can respond, "Maybe, maybe not, but right now I am breathing." When the mind says, "I wasted my youth," you can respond, "Perhaps, but right now I can choose kindness." When the mind says, "My body is failing," you can respond, "My body is changing, and I can care for it with respect." This is not denial. It is skillful response. Many Buddhist teachings emphasize the middle way, not indulgence, not harshness. Old age often pulls people toward extremes. Either they cling to youth desperately, or they give up entirely. The middle way says, care for the body without worshiping it, enjoy life without attaching to it, plan responsibly without living in fear, rest without shame, work without obsession, love without possession. There is another theme that becomes especially important in old age: dignity. Many people confuse dignity with independence. They fear needing help because they think dependence equals shame. Buddhism invites a different view. Interdependence is reality. No one lives alone, not even the strongest person. You were fed as a child. You learned language from others. You were supported by society. Even the food you eat depends on countless beings and conditions. Recognizing interdependence is not humiliating. It is awakening. It makes you grateful. It makes you humble. It makes you kinder to others who need help. It allows you to receive without collapsing into shame. Receiving with grace is a form of wisdom. It allows others to practice generosity. It keeps relationships balanced. It dissolves the illusion that you must carry everything alone. Now, I want to bring this to a quiet conclusion that still feels warm and human. If you are listening today, perhaps you are not old, but you fear aging. Or perhaps you are older and you are learning to accept change. Wherever you are, these lessons are not reserved for a certain decade. They are timeless. But old age gives them a special power because it strips away distractions and asks, what is real now? What matters now? What kind of mind do I want to live in? A gentle way to grow old is not to pretend you are not aging. It is to stop fighting the truth of change and to start cultivating the qualities that cannot fade with time: awareness, compassion, equanimity, wisdom, generosity, patience. These are treasures that grow stronger with practice. When you focus on these treasures, something remarkable happens. You stop measuring your life by what is leaving. You start measuring your life by what is deepening. So here is a question I want to leave with you, and I want you to answer it honestly in your own quiet way. What are you ready to stop carrying as you grow older? And what are you ready to finally practice while you still have breath? If this video gave you comfort or clarity, Please support the channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what lesson spoke to you most, and what part of aging you are learning to accept. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear tonight. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until next time, breathe gently, be kind to your changing body, be patient with your changing mind, and remember that wisdom is not something you lose with age. It is something you can grow into, one quiet moment at a time.